Ride the signal through the unknown. This is the cryptic current.
Does everyone remember Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370? About 10 years ago, a world-shocking news story was continuously reported. A Boeing 777 passenger plane carrying 239 people disappeared without a clear reason during the flight. At that time, many countries participated in a search and rescue mission, but after many years, the plane still hasn't been found. Recently, foreign experts finally claimed to have found MH370, and some even captured images of the plane using Google Maps. Notably, during the search for MH370, it was accidentally discovered that the plane had circled a specific point in the air for a period of time, which is a holding pattern that planes typically perform when preparing to land. Could it be that MH370 once attempted to land? Or was someone in contact with Malaysia Airlines at the time, and they were negotiating? Most importantly, in an era of advanced satellite coverage like today, how could such an advanced Boeing 777 passenger suddenly disappear like that? Or is someone deliberately hiding the truth? Today, we will explore the latest news about finding MH370. Hello everyone, I'm Miss Ruby. On the evening of March 7, 2014, Kuala Lumpur International Airport was operating normal. At that moment in the departure hall, a mechanical engineer named Paul Wicks was reluctantly saying goodbye to his wife. Paul Wicks was a wonderful father. Since his children were born, he always fulfilled his role as a father well, even insisting on taking them to the park to play every day. But exactly 1 month earlier, he suddenly received a notice from his company, hoping he could go to Mongolia for a 4-week survey trip. Initially, he hesitated because since his son was born, he had never been on a long business trip. But upon reflection, this was a rare opportunity, and there was even a chance for promotion to director. To give his family a better life, Paul eventually happily accepted the assignment. Danica recalled and said that 3 days before boarding the plane, Paul did everything a father and husband can do. He took his 3-year-old and 1-year-old sons to the zoo, and even organized a family party, inviting neighbors and his parents to join the fun. Even on the morning of the flight, he and his 2 sons formed a band. Everything seemed normal. The biggest difference was on the way to the airport. Paul suddenly gave Danica 2 boxes and said, if by chance he couldn't return, give his wedding ring to the first son to get married, and the watch to the second son to get married. As soon as Paul finished speaking, Danica was stunned. At that time, Paul gently explained. He did this because not long before, they had been in a car accident, and that experience made him think he needed to do this. But he told his wife not to worry, he was sure nothing would happen. After some comforting, Paul happily bid farewell to his wife and 2 sons. At that moment, Danica still told herself that her husband was just going on a long business trip, and would return home in 4 weeks. But the most unexpected thing was that this would be the last time she saw her husband. Kuala Lumpur International Airport is Malaysia's largest airport. Although inaugurated during the Asian financial crisis, thanks to its strategic geographical location, the airport still became a crucial transit hub for international. Even by 2013, the annual passenger volume has surpassed the 47 million mark. Therefore, even though Paul's flight took off late at night, the airport was still brightly lit. The MH370 flight that Paul will take today is a regular Malaysia Airlines flight, with 2 scheduled flights daily between Kuala Lumpur International Airport and Beijing International Airport. As usual, at 10 a.m. that day, passengers of MH370 had completed boarding procedures. The aircraft was piloted by Captain Zahari Amartya and First Officer Farid Abdul Hamid, both of whom were outstanding pilots for Malaysia Airlines. Captain Zahari was one of Malaysia Airlines' senior captains, with a total flight time of 18,365 hours. First Officer Farid had also accumulated 2,763 hours of actual flight. This was his final flight as first officer. After this flight, Farid would officially become a captain. At 0:25, when everything was ready, MH370 was finally cleared for takeoff. After waiting, the aircraft officially took off at 042. 10 minutes later, the plane had climbed to an altitude of 35,000 feet. The flight proceeded smoothly, and Kuala Lumpur Control Tower instructed MH370 to contact air traffic control in Ho Chi Minh. They would be responsible for guiding the next leg of the journey. Good night. 6:30 a.m. on March 8, 10 years ago. According to the plan, MH370 should have landed at Beijing International Airport by this time, but the time had come, and the waiting families did not see any passengers emerge. Perhaps the flight was delayed. This was the common thought among those waiting, and their only hope. Heartbreakingly, 1 hour later, at 7:24 a.m., Malaysia Airlines announced to the media that MH370 had lost contact. At that time, most of the passengers' families learned the news through broadcasts. But this wasn't the most puzzling part, as in reality, just 40 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft had already lost contact. It's unclear why Malaysia Airlines delayed announcing the information for over 6 hours. However, the most important thing at that moment was to quickly launch search and rescue operations. Malaysia Airlines stated that the last known location of the aircraft was in the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand, so they dispatched rescue teams and asked everyone to remain calm and wait. But strangely, when the rescue team arrived at the designated location, they detected nothing unusual. The Gulf of Thailand was calm, without a ripple. Mike Len, the captain of another flight at the same time, also shared with the media that around 1:21 a.m. that day, the Thai MH370 went missing. He had flown over that area but didn't think a plane had just crashed because and later, facts verified this captain's judgment was correct. Because after disappearing, MH370 had turned around and flown in another direction. In fact, by the time the Malaysian government realized they were searching in the wrong location, it was already 5 days later, and the plane had likely crashed long ago due to fuel exhaustion. Most importantly, according to expert investigations, the strange circumstances surrounding this flight were due to someone intentionally making it unfindable. To uncover the truth, we must return to the moment of the last contact. Therefore, the final moment of contact for MH370 ended with the aircraft's transponder and ACARS. Therefore, the final moment of contact for MH370 ended with the according to later released information, within the 2 minutes of the dialogue. Both the transponder and ACARS of MH370 ceased functioning simultaneously. The transponder and ACARS are aircraft identification systems, providing air traffic control centers with information such as the aircraft's specific location and identification of them. Notably, the likelihood of both systems failing at the same time is extremely low. Another explanation is that someone intentionally turned off the system. According to the Malaysian government statement, precisely because the system was turned off, they believe the location where the signal was lost was where the plane crashed. It wasn't until the rescue team found no debris that they investigated satellite data. And only then did they discover the plane had long since turned back toward the Indian Ocean. But the strange thing is why they didn't investigate the satellite data from the very beginning. Even stranger is that an anonymous pilot once stated, even if both the transponder and ASB were turned off, the plane could still be seen on radar. It's just that at this point, the radar only displayed as a bright up without showing the flight number. So at that time all other planes on the radar displayed their identities. Wouldn't it have been very easy to deduce that the one without an identity was MH370? And if that were indeed the case, then the search and rescue team shouldn't have been searching in the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand. Because according to the Malaysian government statement, their military radar had detected that bright dot early on. It wasn't until 2:22, when MH370 went beyond the coverage of the military radar, that the Malaysian government could no longer continue tracking. The key point is that the last position of MH370 on radar was already in the Strait of Malacca. So why did the search and rescue team search at the location where the transponder signal was lost over the South China? After all, these two locations are hundreds of miles apart. Even stranger is that according to records. At 1:30, 8 minutes after the transponder was cut off, air traffic control had asked two planes to contact MH370, but MH370 did not respond to either. However, the contact person heard mumbling in the cockpit. Doesn't this indicate that someone had noticed something abnormal with MH370? At that time, they had just closely tracked an unidentified plane. They have been able to determine the plane. In fact, even the relatives of the victims on MH370 had similar questions. Regarding why they didn't send planes to intercept MH370. The reason given by the Malaysian government was that they believed this unidentified plane had no hostile intent. Sounds hard to believe, doesn't it? But even more unbelievable is that after 4 years of effort, we still haven't found MH370. Until November 30th, 2021, a retired figure suddenly announced to the world that he had found MH370. Today, in an era where the internet is so advanced, perhaps most people find it hard to imagine that the best way to communicate used to be radio, not the internet. Back then, if you wanted to chat with distant friends, you not only needed expensive radio equipment, but also certain skills to install and tune to the correct frequency. However, what's even more unbelievable is that someone used this technology to locate the whereabouts of MH370. In 2021, the rather obscure piece of news began spreading across the UK. It turned out that a retired British engineer named Richard Godfrey claimed that, through the communication principles of traditional radio, he had found the final resting place of MH370. Predictably, initially almost no one believed what Richard said. The simple reason is that MH370 can be considered the greatest mystery in aviation history. Back then, more than 20 countries mobilized a total of 30 aircraft and 60 ships of air, searching an area of 120,000 square kilometers using the most advanced satellite, but ultimately found nothing. How could an aircraft so difficult to locate be detected using technology from 129 years ago? Therefore, initially, everyone mocked Mr. Richard, thinking he was just craving attention. Because there had occasionally been rumors of finding MH370 before. For example, in 2018, British media reported, a technology expert named Ian Wilson, using Google Maps, discovered an aircraft in the Cambodian jungle, and its shape resembled the missing MH370 aircraft. But later, through media investigation, on the day MH370 disappeared, nearby residents did not hear any sound of a plane crash. So it was analyzed and determined that the photo was definitely not MH370. However, unlike the Google Maps incident, the number of people believing Mr. Richard Godfrey is increasing. Even the expert in charge of the MH370 search back then, Peter Foley, believed Mr. Richard's method was worth trying. It turns out that Richard Godfrey is not just an ordinary retired man. Richard Godfrey, a graduate at Salford University in the UK, majoring in computer science and engineering, once served as Deputy Chief Engineer at NASA and the European Space Agency. He's an expert in aviation electronic system design. Simply put, Mr. Richard is a top expert in the aviation field. Mr. Richard said that since MH370 disappeared in 2014, he has always sought to locate the aircraft. And by chance, he discovered that even though today's technology is very advanced, there are still a large number of radio enthusiasts all over the world. Every day, they use radios to communicate with each other. When they communicate, a network of weak signals invisible to the naked eye is formed. And when an aircraft flies through these networks, it causes signal interference. Therefore, by tracking where radio signals are interfered with, the whereabouts of MH370 can be known. He began collecting radio data from around the world on the day MH370 disappeared. Surprisingly, after collecting the data, he actually saw an interference signal that perfectly matched the flight path map estimated by MH370 satellite. The only difference is that the handshake signal used by the satellite can only be located once per hour, while Mr. Richard's radio signal could be located every 2 minutes. route map could determine MH370. Therefore, if following Richard's route map, the initial search area could be narrowed from 120,000 square kilometers to 300 square kilometers. Mr. Richard believes that the reason the aircraft was not found before was due to the search area being too large, leading to many areas being searched only once, making it easy to miss the aircraft due to terrain or seabed slope. But if the area is narrowed to 300 square kilometers, it will have the opportunity to examine different angles carefully, and the chance of finding MH370 will naturally increase. Richard Godfrey even confidently declared to the media that, at that time, the host was quite surprised by Mr. Richard's confidence, so he asked, how can he be sure that the interference signal was from MH370 and not from another aircraft or ship? Mr. Richard replied, since the two aircraft were only an hour apart after satellite comparison, it was easy to determine that this flight path map belonged to MH370. Importantly, right after Richard was certain this was MH370, he discovered a very strange point. As mentioned earlier, because the radio signal could be located every 2 minutes, the final route of MH370 is clearly visible on this map. Among them, the strangest point is that when MH370 reached west of Sumatra, it began circling, entering a holding pattern for 22 minutes. Usually, when there are too many aircraft at an airport, for safety reasons, most aircraft switch to such a circling holding pattern, waiting for air traffic control to confirm landing clearance before preparing to land. Coincidentally, around the area where MH370 was circling, there are many international airports. The key point is that this waiting state must be manually operated, which once again shows that the reason MH370 had an incident is because someone intentionally manipulated the aircraft. An airport might believes that the reason MH370 circled near Sumatra Airport was because those controlling the aircraft were negotiating. Once the negotiations succeeded, the aircraft would prepare to land. Even the family of victim Danica was very shocked after learning this information. 22 minutes is a long time to go far away. He must have talked to someone. It's just a transmitter. So if the aircraft was really hijacked, then who did this? Currently, most people believe it was Captain Zahari. And the reason the captain hijacked the aircraft was because the political figure he supported, Anwar Ibrahim, was arrested. It's possible Zahari was threatening the Malaysian government to release this person. And the reason people think the problem lies with the pilot is that after the 9/11 incident in 2001, all flight safety levels worldwide were upgraded. For example, before 2001, although luggage still had to go through security checks, some sharp tools like scissors, nail clippers, Swiss Army knives, and even bottled water could be carried on board. But after the 9/11 incident, countries realized that aviation safety regulations were too lax, so from that point on, many such regulations for air travel were introduced. Even the cockpit door became more secure and even bulletproof. Therefore, once the cockpit door is closed, unless the person inside is willing to come out, it is very difficult for someone from outside to enter. That's why most people think the captain is the most suspicious. Some media even reported on the flight simulator equipment at the captain's home to prove that the captain had practiced a similar route. From this, they concluded that the captain intentionally planned the disappearance of MH3. However, according to subsequent investigations, the flight simulator equipment can only record the coordinates of the flight, not the time. So the suspicious route mentioned by the media is just a map of the route consisting of these 7 coordinates, and it cannot be confirmed that these 7 coordinates were created during the same flight. Not only that, the chief investigator, who was responsible for the final investigation report on MH370, also separately investigated the captain, but he found nothing suspicious. Additionally, the investigation into the captain's assets did not reveal any signs that he wanted to hijack the aircraft for suicide. However, the chief investigator also stated that before finding the aircraft's black box, everything is just speculation. And this is also the strangest, because logically, we have now determined that MH370 eventually crashed into the sea. and the black box is designed to emit a very strong signal when it comes into contact with water. Through many tests, even at a depth of 4,267 meters, the black box's signal can be received. Moreover, this signal can continue to be transmitted for 30 days or more. T found MH370. Even stranger, according to satellite positioning and radio positioning by Richard, the depth of the sea area at MH370. At such a depth, we should have easily received the black box's signal. In fact, there were media reports claiming to have received the signal, but then there was no further information. In short, as the chief investigator said, before finding the aircraft's black box, everything is just speculation. It has been 10 years since MH370 disappeared. The Malaysian government has promised the victims' families many times that once there is sufficient evidence, they will definitely reopen the investigation into MH370. Additionally, many experts now agree with Richard's research report. Their key point is that it was accidentally discovered during document review. The location where MH370 crashed matches the location identified by Australian oceanographer Radhika Paturaji. That is to say, at least 2 experts now believe MH370 is located here. S opinion, but even a technology and underwater search company that once said, as long as the Malaysian government authorizes it, they will immediately allocate a budget of $20 to $30 million to search for MH370. And as before, no fee is not found. According to the latest information, on January 18, 2024, a major Australian media outlet published an article with a headline, "They don't want to." In it, a leading expert on the search for the missing flight MH370 made a shocking statement, stunning those who hope to solve the greatest aviation mystery in history. This is because the statement has led people to doubt and question the Malaysian government's commitments and efforts in investigating the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. Specifically, the article states that British aerospace engineer Richard Godfrey, an independent investigator, co-author of a study using quick signer propagation reporter technology, the technology used to track and analyze weak radio waves to determine the aircraft's position and flight path, has raised doubts about the actions of relevant authorities. He told the Sydney Morning Herald that, "In my view, the Malaysian government does not want any further search to locate the wreckage of MH370. Additionally, there have been 2 independent reports in the past 4 months proposing to search for MH370 in areas of the southern Indian Ocean. However, any new search is currently in a state of limbo. Unless given the green light by the main owner of Malaysia Airlines, the Malaysian government." Although previously, the Malaysian government always stated that it was ready to reopen the search if new information emerged. Currently, there is no comment on the above-mentioned skeptical statements. For the more than 200 victims' families, this disappearance is like a long and painful wait. And for each of us, finding MH370 is also very important. Because whether it was an accident or a conspiracy, if the aircraft is not found, then it also means that such an incident could happen again in the future. Surely no one wants this to happen to themselves or anyone else, right? Therefore, I hope everyone continues to care about MH370, because only then will the Malaysian government have the motivation to reopen the investigation and the truth be revealed soon. What about you? What do you think about this issue? In your opinion, is the current issue still just about not knowing where the plane is? Or is there really someone who doesn't want the plane to be found? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below the video. Our sharing session for today will pause here. If you find this video or the content on the Miss Movie channel truly useful, please share it with your friends so they can learn about it too. Thank you all very much. Goodbye and see you again. Subscribe to the Wawa School channel so you don't miss any exciting videos.
If the signal hooked you, subscribe and catch the next ripple.